Bible Questions and Answers program. What kind of Bible question do you have? What subject is of concern to you? Well, this is a program designed to offer you the opportunity to call in and ask questions or comments relating to the Bible. Our host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann, will respond by going to the Bible, the infallible Word of God. Our program is hosted Monday through Friday beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Sundays, it begins at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Call our toll-free number at 888-969-9883. Again, that's 888-969-9883. There will be someone there to answer your call and give you simple instructions to be on the program. You can also join through Zoom video by going to ebiblefellowship.org and clicking the icon at the top. If you're calling in from another country, select the International Toll-Free button to find your country's number.
Okay, welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's new open forum program. We're having some technical problems tonight. That's why we got the black box on the screen where you can't see any number. And also, well, you don't need to know all the trouble, but Lord willing, we'll be able to get through this. So why don't we just begin by going to the first person on the phone tonight. Welcome to our new open forum program. Please go ahead with your call.
Yeah, hi, Chris. Romans 1, verses 25, 26, and 27. And then I have a comment.
Romans 1, starting in verse 25, who changed the truth of God into a lie and worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet.
Yeah, and I know people who insist homosexuals were born that way. They can't help it. And that's not what this is saying at all. This is saying they changed the truth of God into a lie. Also, how is this all a red flag indicating that we are at the end of the world real soon? And I'll take your response, Chris. Thank you.
Well, you know, that response is interesting. When you hear people say, I've always been inclined this way, I've always been a homosexual, because homosexuality is sin, and sin is defined in the Bible. Sin is the transgression of the law. That's, I believe, from 1 John. That's how God defines sin. It is the transgression of the law. So in the law of God, of course, God establishes sexual relations only in marriage between a man and a woman. That's the only time and the only place is after someone's married, and in that marriage, a lawful marriage between a man and a woman, then sexual relations are good. Sexual relations are not contrary to the law of God. They are not sinful. Everything else outside of the marriage bed, all sexual activity, whether it's heterosexual activity or homosexual activity, is against the law of God and is sin. God has laws against fornication between male and female, adultery with male and female, and any kind of homosexual activity between same sex is against the law of God. And it so happens that the Bible tells us that man, since Adam, is conceived in sin and born speaking lies. Sin is a part of our nature. We are born sinners. Let me show that from the Bible in Psalm, I think it's Psalm 58. Let me go there. It says in verse 3, the wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. Why? Why do you not have to teach a little child how to lie? It comes naturally. When two little children are in the room and one of them breaks something and mom and dad comes in, who broke it? And the one who broke it points the finger at the other one, and they lie. They lie. It's a natural thing for a sinner to lie. It's a natural thing for a sinner to sin. So there's actually truth in the statement, I'm born a homosexual, or this is how I've always been. Well, the true part is you're born a sinner and you've always been a sinner, and that sin will show itself in the lives of people in various ways, depending on circumstances, environment, family, what TV shows we watch, what movies we're programmed with as we're growing up. All these things, the neighborhood, the school, the books we read in school, everything starts to contribute to form in the sinner's life his or her particular sin weakness. And so it can appear very natural for a sinner to engage in homosexual activity, and it's as natural as anything. Of course, just like it's very natural for a young man or a young woman to engage in other sexual activity, heterosexual activity outside of marriage that is equally sinful. And so, yeah, that I would agree with the person. Yes, you're born inclined to it as a sinner, and it just so happens that's the form or the path that the weakness in your life led you in that way. And so the curious thing about the sin of homosexuality, because again, it's a sin. Fornication's a sin, adultery's a sin, lying's a sin, murder's a sin, stealing's a sin. It's a sin. There's a lot of sin. And yet, for some reason, in time past, the sin of homosexuality was particularly shameful and really, really hidden by people. That's why it was said to be in the closet. And when we look at it, I think that is all the operation of God throughout time past, because the Holy Spirit operates in everyone's hearts, or because the law is written upon their heart, and the Spirit could impress that law upon someone to whatever degree, according to the will of God, whether they were saved or unsaved, whether they heard the Bible or didn't hear the Bible. And even in cultures without the Bible, it was, again, considered to be shameful, something to be kept secret. Don't let anyone know. Tremendous shame if it were found out. And so why that sin out of so many sins was it in the closet? And Romans 1 helps to tell us that God allowed people to have those kind of feelings, and society and culture to have those kinds of associations with that sin, that this is something really, really shameful and you can't let anyone know, in order that at the time of the end, which we certainly have come to the time of the end, when this sin becomes prominent, and that's what it says here 3 times. It says God gave them up, and the sin of homosexuality is right on, the main focus. God is saying that he gave them up to that particular sin, and then the whole list of sins. So there's a lot of sins at the time of the end the Lord gives up the world to, but he highlights the sin of homosexuality because it will stand out. It will come out of the closet. And it's not like, okay, it came out of the closet, and now it's just like any other sin, and in the same category, doesn't stand out like all the other sins. There's so many sins, and it's just sin. It doesn't really stand out in a big way. But this sin all of a sudden went from being in the closet, a shameful thing, and societies around the world kept it hidden, kept it secret, to now there's parades going down Main Street of some of the biggest cities in the world, and people are celebrating it. They're saying they're proud of it, and not only the people involved, but even the government and at times and the leaders. It really became, for a while, very popular, very much magnified in a big way. And that's where, as you mentioned, we can see what God is doing. He kept it under wraps, but it's at the time of the end, Romans 1 is telling us about, I will give them up. And the word give up means delivered. It's the same word, Greek word that is translated as delivered, concerning Jesus being delivered to Pilate. It's a word that means delivered up to judgment. And so God will deliver up the world to sin. Sin will multiply, like it says in Matthew 24, and abound in the earth. And especially this sin will become very prominent, where it's unmistakable. The sin that was typical of Sodom right before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, that sin will be unmissable. You won't be able to miss this signal flag, this indicator from God that you have come to the time of the end of the world, when all of a sudden there's pride months and rainbow flags, not because of the rainbow found in the Bible after the flood, but somehow it's been taken over to represent a gay pride, and all these groups band together. Well, that is the signal, just like in Sodom, that God has given them up, delivered them up. It's a judgment of God on society. Whenever, no sin is good. No sin is good. And you don't celebrate sin. Even the world, for the most part, refrains from celebrating sin. They don't have a month, fornication month, adultery month, or murder month, or theft month. Why would any sin be celebrated in that way? Because it's the operation of God to allow it to show the corruption of the world, the sin corruption of the nations, of the cities of the nations, of the people of those cities and nations, and to make the connection with Sodom right before its destruction. It too was giving over to similar wickedness, and so this is the reason why God's the one, to sum it up, God's the one who impressed upon the conscious of individuals in past time that it was a shameful thing. And at the time of the end, the Lord, through his Spirit, lifts his hand of restraint off the hearts of and minds of men, so their conscience is not responding in a way as past generations have, and now they view it completely differently. It is along the lines of spiritual blindness, when people cannot see basic moral teachings that were placed within their own hearts. God wrote his law on the hearts of men, and when God judged the church becomes spiritually blind to the Bible because they had relationship to the Bible. When God judges the world, the people of the world have no real connection to the Bible, but God's has worked in their lives through the law written upon their hearts, and they start becoming blind to those laws, and we see what we would call apostasy in the church. In secular society, it would show itself as we have been witnessing with the confusion over gender, the homosexual activity, and gay marriage, and all those things. It is a loss of understanding of that moral code God wrote and placed within every human being. But at the time of the end, man is the wickedness of man is coming to the surface, and God is lifting his hand, and all we're seeing is the true spiritually dead condition of man that's always been there, but the Lord kept it under wraps. And now, since it's Judgment Day, since the world's almost over, he's showing everyone this is the heart of a sinner, and it's not a pretty sight. But thank you.
Could I say what? Yeah, how this is like a red flag indicating we're at the end of the world real soon. Like extra proof that we're almost right there.
It's one of the major indicators. There are certain indicators. The church, the apostasy of the church, which is the spiritual blindness, the falling away from truth of all churches, is well, actually, before that, there's Israel becoming a nation again. The fig tree's in leaf. God wrote about that, and he says, then you know that summer is nigh. Summer is harvest, which identifies with the time of judgment. And so Israel in 1948 began the final indicators, biblical signs. God writes about the fig tree in the Bible. That's where we look to get our understanding. And then we see, oh, wow, this is incredible. They've been scattered among the nations for over 1900 years. And now they've reformed into a nation among nations once again. Big indicator. And then the apostasy of the church, the end of the church age, the abounding iniquity of the world, which would include the giving up of the people of the world to spiritual blindness, of basic moral teachings impressed upon their heart, and that would identify with homosexuality. But thank you for calling.
Thank you, Chris.
And let's go to our next caller tonight. Welcome to our program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hi, Chris. Can you please read Psalm 39, verses 4 and 5?
Psalm 39 and verse 4. Jehovah, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Behold, thou hast made my days as a handbreadth, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity.
Okay, so here it says a Psalm of David, and it seems like in these verses it's talking about time, as you had pointed out. And when I was reading this recently, I looked up hand breadth in Strong's Concordance, and I could only see 3 other references. So do you mind reading 2 other ones? And one is in 2 Chronicles 4. It's verse 5, but you could read verse 2 just for the context.
2 Chronicles 4, verse 2, and then verse 5.
Yes, please.
Also, he made a molten sea of 10 cubits from brim to brim, round in compass, and 5 cubits the height thereof, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. And then verse 5.
Yeah.
And the thickness of it was a handbreadth, and the brim of it like the work of the brim of a cup, with flowers of lilies, and it received and held 3,000 baths.
Okay, so here in verse 5 it has handbreadth, and it says 3,000 baths. Then another place is in 1 Kings 7, verse 26.
1 Kings 7:26. And it was verse it's the same thing, right? Molten
Yeah.
sea, verse 23, and verse 26. And it was a handbreadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup, with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths.
Okay, first of all, did you ever notice that in here in verse 26 it says 2,000? It contained 2,000 baths, but in 2 Chronicles 4, verse 5, it contained 3,000 baths. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, in the one, it is different wording.
Yeah.
It says, in Second Chronicles, where it received and held 3,000 baths. And over in Kings, it says it contained 2,000 baths. So as we know, whenever we see an apparent contradiction, a discrepancy like this, we know both statements are true. And when we start with that understanding, then we realize, well, the sea, the molten sea, could have 3,000 baths, but at the point that God is speaking in the one verse, it had 2,000 baths. So in other words, both statements are true. It's kind of like, you have a gallon jug, and so in one place you say I have a gallon jug, and the other place you say I filled up a quart, and so you filled up 32 ounces of the gallon, and in this case it would be filling up 2,000 baths, wherein it could hold up to 3,000 baths.
Right. So I looked up the word received, and it can mean strengthen or prevail. And so then I thought, well, maybe this is being related to time, and maybe this filling here was at a later time than the 2,000 baths. And so I was thinking, since Psalm 39 led me here, and that had to do with time, could the 3,000 also be related to time from the reign of David? Because it mentioned David's psalm in that psalm you read, to the end of the world. That could be 3,000 there. So maybe that's far-fetched.
Well, excuse me. The psalm, that word handbreadth, and this is the only 3 places it's found?
Yeah, well, there's the other one is yeah, there was 3, and one is in 1 Kings 7, verse 9, which is the word coping, or coping.
1 Kings 7, 9. All these were of costly stones according to the measures of hewed stones, sawed with saws within and without, even from the foundation unto the coping, and so on the outside toward the great court. Yeah, okay.
That's the third reference.
Well, see, it is interesting because if we start in reverse, we're looking at the molten sea. We're looking at the molten sea, and God gives us 2 numbers that are curious. And the molten sea is the place where the priests would wash in before they would go about their priestly duties. And of course, Christ was a great high priest after the order of Melchizedek. But if you start here and you're looking at handbreadth, and you see the brazen sea in 1 Kings 7:26 contained 2,000 baths, and 2 Chronicles 4 it held 3,000 baths. We could then go to Psalm 39 that ties handbreadth to time, and if we go from the point of the building of the temple, which would be the foundation of the temple, we know the temple foundation was laid in 967, and this is, Solomon building this temple. And 967 goes, if we go from there to 2033, it's 3,000 years. So that might be what could, a possibility for 3,000 baths. On the other hand, if you go from 967 to Christ, well, that would be 1,000 years. Yeah, I was thinking of the 2,000 years, like about 2,000 cubits from Christ entering into Jordan. But yeah, I don't see how to get to really tie that together. So
Well, also,
it was just a thought.
well,
It's interesting, but I'm not sure how it could fit in with like a timeline.
well, also in Job 37, verse 18, it has two similar Hebrew words.
Job 37:18.
Yeah.
Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass?
Yeah, so the word strong is the same as the word that could mean prevail, or it's the same Hebrew word, or it's the same, it's 230. Anyways, it's the same as the one in First Chronicles. I don't know how you can do your studies because it's hard for me to even
Well,
get to
you
the
mean
one, but
it's the
this
same
one,
as the verses we just read in Second
yeah,
Chronicles 4?
and the molten,
Yeah,
that was
I see the molten, but where's the word strong if we go back to
okay.
Second
I'll go
Chronicles
back.
4?
It's in received. Um, it's the same word as received, but in received it's 2388, and here it's 2389. But the Hebrew
The same
letters is
consonants. Yeah.
exactly the same.
Okay,
And then
so
this
this word
here,
received has the same consonants as the word strong in
yeah,
Job 37:18.
right. And also then that when I read that, then that led me to it's the same as the sky, where it says sky.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as Job 38, verse 37, which is the word clouds.
Okay.
Who can, do you want to read that?
Who can number the clouds in wisdom?
Right.
Or who
So
can
there's
stay the
that,
battles of heaven?
yeah, so clouds is the same word as sky. And there again is that who can number. So that's why I thought it might have to do with the amount of time. And also then you mentioned,
The molten sea does come into view in the book of Revelation, in Revelation 15, where we read of 7 angels in verse 1. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And this would tie in with the Job reference, Job 37, that says, hast thou with them spread out the sky, which is strong as a molten looking glass? So molten glass, and molten comes from the sea that was made in the temple for the priests to wash in before they carry out their priestly duties. And here, these 7 angels, they're actually not angelic beings. They are the people of God. They are the elect. We know due to their clothing in verse 6. And the 7 angels or messengers came out of the temple, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, and having their breasts girded with golden girdles. The pure and white linen is the righteousness of saints. Revelation 19:8 says that. And angelic beings, the good angels that didn't fall, they don't need the righteousness of saints. They never fell, they never sinned. And also their breasts girded with golden girdles, that is priestly attire. If we go to Exodus 28:40, Exodus 28 and verse 40, and for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats, and thou shalt make for them girdles and bonnets, and thou shalt thou make for them for glory and for beauty. Also, there's a second thing in Exodus 29:9. And thou shalt gird them with girdles, Aaron and his sons, and put the bonnets on them. And the priest's office shall be theirs for a perpetual statute, and thou shalt consecrate Aaron and his sons. Priests wear girdles, and God's people are a royal priesthood, prophets, priests, and kings, spiritual priests, to offer up spiritual sacrifices. And so the 7 messengers are coming out of the temple. But before that, and the temple can, of course, in Revelation 2 and 3, the Lord wrote to the 7 churches, but he wrote to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, or the angel of the church in Thyatira. He wrote to 7 angels who were in the churches, the messengers of God in the churches, the elect. And now they're coming out of the temple, like we came out of the churches and congregations, and were given eventually the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues of the wrath of God. But before that, there's the sea of glass. And in verse 2, I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. So the 7 angels, 7 messengers, the elect, have gotten the victory over the beast. But to get the victory over the beast, who is Satan, during the time of the Great Tribulation, it wasn't really a complete victory until the tribulation ended. And so this ties in with the elect going forth with the last vials full of the wrath of God, after first having been washed, the molten sea, having been washed to perform our spiritual priestly duties as children of God, of ministering the word in the day of judgment. And I suppose this could also identify with bringing the news that judgment was on the churches, because judgment began at the house of God. But I think, given how it leads into chapter 16, the pouring out of the 7 last vials full of the wrath of God. So the Lord's making a point. It's not the first vials. Judgment begins first at the house of God. It's the last vials. There's no more wrath of God after these 7, which would indicate the transition's been made to Judgment Day, and it's the elect. Christ comes with 10,000s of his saints. How are the saints clothed? Pure, fine, white linen, and we could add golden girdles. We have on priestly attire. Know ye not the saints will judge the world, and to execute the judgment written like Psalm 149 tells us, it's a priestly function in the spiritual realm, or in the way God is looking at it. And we first had to be washed from our sin, and that was salvation. Only those truly saved are qualified in the day of judgment to carry and bring this message of God's wrath. And so there, now the point, see, 967 is when they laid the foundation. As far as building the sea, the molten sea, that more than likely didn't happen in 967, but it does give us a connection with the temple, and going from 967 to 2033, and even before that with David, from 1007 when he began to be king until his death in 967, there's that 40-year period, and so 3,000 baths of the molten sea could tie into what happens after 3,000 years. Like Psalm 39 is saying, teach us to number our days. And our days are like a handbreadth. It may relate to that.
That's interesting. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you very much for sharing those verses and Strong's numbers. I don't see any other callers. The number to call is 888-969-9883. Again, that's 888-969-9883. Okay, well, I don't see anyone else on the phone, so we're going to end our program here. Lord willing, we'll have another open forum program tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We hope you can join us then. But for now, may you have a good night, and may the Lord's perfect will be done.
Thanks again for joining us for eBible Fellowship's live open forum program. You can call in with your Bible questions Monday through Friday beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and Sundays beginning at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, may the Lord's perfect will be done.